You know, one thing a lot of people like to make it seem as though the American slave trade is
Look,
the
it's already fixed. What are we talking to him for?
I said the American
I
slave.
didn't even look at this.
Yeah.
What are we talking to him
The
for?
American
He's
slave-
prepared.
There's a check in the back pocket.
It's over. Spit it
Ameri-
back out.
the-
We
the-
did
the
it. I'm out
American-
of here.
The American slave trade
No,
was unique.
we're
in and of itself.
done.
But
We're
you know,
done.
Yeah, we're done.
We're
We
done.
forget,
We're done.
we forget.
No,
that
we'll
the
see you
slave
next
trade-
time.
Hold up, gentlemen.
I'm
We forget
outta
the slave
here.
trade in the Caribbean.
Look at this
We
shirt.
forget the slave
Look at
trade.
this
We
shirt.
forget the
I'm
slave
out.
trade in
It's
South
real, man.
America. And Brazil was the last state to have slavery officially here in the Americas. So come on, guys. It's a safe country. You know? I can't believe you guys just walked out on me. No! You guys lost.
Look
You know?
at this. We gotta fix this in. I didn't even see that.
Gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Spinner Rack is back. We're talking about the new show that the creators of, not the creators, but the showrunners for Game of Thrones are going to start. Something about the Confederacy, where they take another look at it. There's been a lot of controversy, and so I'm going to let my boy Petey go into the details of it, and we're going to just shoot that bad boy down.
Well, I'm gonna pass it back to my boy Cal.
And I'll take that pass. These guys are out of their flick minds.
Wait a second. I didn't even. No, I'm just kidding.
Petey set it up.
The idea of Confederacy is this is supposed to be. Now, hold on. Before I even go that far, you have people today. You have like the right and the left. Well, you got the right, okay, that wants to live like in their alternative world, and then you have the left that wants to recreate history. This is kind of feeding to that, you know, where those extreme minds are at this portion, because this is a show that says, hey, what would it be like in 2017 or 2018 if the Confederacy had won the Civil War and slavery was still in effect today? Now, there are people here in the United States who would love to have seen that happen. You know what they call them? We call them Klansmen, okay? They were marching not too long ago. And we all said, no, this is terrible.
Yes.
But we're going to come over here and do this in fiction because, I don't know, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. So I looked at this, I mean, because there's this show and then there's the other one, Black America, where Black America says, hey, what would happen if black people had been given reparations after the Civil War? And they got 3 states. They got, Mississippi,
Alabama.
Louisiana, and Georgia, I believe. And what's the setup on that? Those 3 states are doing well. The economy's great. Everything's going good for the black people. But in all the other states, everything's going poorly for the white people. So they don't like those 3 states. So guess what? It's going to be, you guessed it, black people versus white people. They're on such extremes on this nature. But with the Confederacy, which is probably going to take more of our time than anything else, how in the world could you come up with this idea and put it out there when there are people who, you couldn't do something like this with, say, let me not even get into that. There are people out there who would like to see this as an actuality. You can't fictionalize something of this nature. It is too red and too raw to the history, okay, of the United States to come over here and try to make it into some optionable television show that is going to run for a certain amount of years. 2, if slavery is still in effect, you're telling me you're going to find black actors who will come on, actors and actresses, I should
Unemployed.
say, who will come onto this show and play these roles? There was a show that came out some time ago. What was it? It was called like the Diary or the Journal of Desmond Pfeiffer.
Yes.
And he was supposed to be a slave at the time to Abraham Lincoln. It lasted all of 2 or 3 episodes. Everybody railed against it. And that was, and that was pretty much the end of it. Now, 2018, we're going to have another bite at the apple. We're going to have another bite at black people being modern day slaves or portraying this. It's madness at the end of the day. The fact that stuff like this can even be, not even greenlit, but the fact that things like this can even be brought up for discussion and you don't have people say, no. You want to do this, do a YouTube video on your own and, do that. We just got through people marching, okay, in a city talking about Jews will not replace us, marching with a swastika behind them. And we're going to put this show on and talk about this is, art, freedom of expression. you have to be responsible at the end of the day. And if you don't realize that a show like this is going to be speaking to certain type of extremists, and we have a problem with extremism right now, then you're just an irresponsible clot at the end of the day.
Well, I think that covers a lot of the discussion. Only thing I would add is that being at the top, being at the top of where these creators are, these, showrunners, you don't have to immediately jump to this. You could just do this if you want to do something on the Civil War, and they've done it in television many a time with the wrong amount of assets. Basically, they've been doing it on like what's it like on a soap opera budget. Like if you want to do the Civil War, do it big budget style. Just do it the actual story. Like there've been documentaries, there've been recreations. Like I think on channel 13 they had a really good one, a 3-parter. Like do something of that nature. Not try to say, well, what's the story? Why would someone want to watch a story about like Underground? Why would someone want to watch a story about slaves and how we led to the end of the Civil War? Why? No, don't think about it as a storyteller. Just do the right story, not do this thing. Well, why would we do it if there's no interest in the story? Like the history is already interesting. You don't need to add to it and add a hook to it. So that's all I would say about it.
So listen, Cal, I kind of agree with what you guys are saying. I don't know necessarily if I'm necessarily interested in the current premise of it. But one problem that I do have is when people start saying don't show something without it ever being written or put out there. And so I would like to see more of this, to see what exactly they're trying to discover. More of what they're trying to say.
I get lost in that flip mind.
So that, because, basically what we're doing, we are.
I know what you're doing.
We're doing.
I know what you're doing. Okay, your smile can't fool me. All right.
And I have to disagree.
I gotta live.
Listen.
No,
did I not give you guys a chance to talk? And I'm just trying to say.
If I decided to make a show and this was going to be like 1,000 different ways I can kill Mario, and that was like a 10-year series and stuff, you'd be like, hey, what the hell's going on over here? No. This country has a fixation.
Okay.
This country has a fixation with this because it's like every generation that comes up seems to have to be re-educated to it because we can't let it go. If we could let it go, we could actually move forward from it. But no, we can't let it go. And then it becomes, well, what if this and what if that? That's the people who want to rewrite stuff. But this is just again, flat out irresponsible.
I totally disagree because we haven't seen what they want to do. And, I think some of the creators, some of the people behind are African Americans who are also coming with this idea. So
what are you saying?
What does that have to do with anything? They're getting paid.
But we don't know what the story is. You're shooting down something before we even see what
happens. The story is about
and
black people still being slaves in the current year. That is what the story is about.
That's just a general premise, and we don't know what the whole thing is about.
That's enough. There are living, breathing people right now who would like that as a reality. Right. Could you imagine a show?
There's a whole bunch of other shows that you have living, breathing people who want that particular type of reality.
Could you imagine?
Can I finish what I'm saying?
Could you imagine a show where that was okay? What is it? The Nazis won the war, and now we have a show.
There's a show that the Nazis won the war
the Nazis
Man
won
in the High Tower.
What they don't show? They don't show. They don't show. Hey, the Nazis won the war, and then in the last 40 years, it's now the Omega Man. It's down to the last Jewish person on earth, and they're trying to hunt them down. They would never show that.
In the last High Tower, you see who has been dominating. People who are
from America.
African Americans have been castigated to the side. Look, all I'm saying
doesn't sound good. You're telling me it doesn't work.
All I'm just saying, but I'm saying let's see more. Let's see more of this.
We don't need to see more. The premise is bad enough.
All I'm saying, the creators have done a great job with Game of Thrones.
If this was the
they
reverse,
seem to be sensitive to
what?
No, they can make anything.
So what I'm saying is, let's hear what they want to see.
They can make anything they want.
They could, but I mean,
they can make anything work.
When I first heard that, I was like, this is crazy.
It is.
I'm saying, you know what? Let's see what they're coming. These guys are pretty.
Spike Lee already did it. He did CSA, the Confederate States of America, and it was terrible. Even though the budget was terrible, it was a terrible idea.
He didn't have all.
It was a terrible. No, the idea was terrible.
Mario, let me put it like this.
The idea was terrible.
Let's say somebody decided they wanted to do an alternative history where it was white people, okay, who were enslaved, and black people, were the slave masters.
Right.
I would say no to that, okay, because it's a divisive and vile notion to show people in that particular manner. You don't need to say, hey, you know what? Let me see how you enslave these people and treat them on television. I don't need to see that.
Yes.
Let me see how bad you treat them today in modern day times. I don't need to see that. Slavery or the subjugation of anyone, dividing people, for me, wrong. You don't need to show people how to do it or give them ideas. They already have enough ideas on it as it is.
Okay, I got that. But when we were watching Underground, right, we saw slavery happening, right? We saw the effects of slavery that was occurring to people, right? You know, all we're gonna, I don't know if I.
No,
That's
but
akin to what Petey was saying.
yeah.
That's the history.
Yeah.
That's not a that's
just-
not
I
a
think they can
reimagining.
they
That's
can
not a
do the
reimagining
history.
of a subjugation of people.
The difference is I think that they're going to show, you know, they're going to be more caring towards the characters. I expect the show to be.
How do you? You're
How?
more caring
Cutting-
towards your slave? Is that what you're saying?
You're a slave, dude. I think the story is going to be a little bit different.
It's about
like that.
slaves.
Okay.
It's about slaves. That is the whole focal point.
Are they going to
slavery.
grow out of?
I think they're going to grow out of it. How things are going
That
to
doesn't
change.
make any
That's
sense.
So we have to have a show about slavery to show how they mature out of it.
I said, listen, we need to hear more about it. I just don't want to.
We heard enough.
Enough.
We've heard enough.
All right, you know what?
These guys, you guys are the top. You can make
Any show. This is not the
You
show
can
for you
do
to
a
make.
show about waitresses' work right now.
Yes.
Someone will green light whatever you guys want to do. Frogs, whatever it is possible. You can do a plague of frogs.
You can make a show about nothing and bring back Seinfeld,
Yes.
and everybody would be happy.
They'd be like, they wouldn't even question it. They're like, okay, this is what they want to do. And
Again,
then
I think they've done a great job with Game of
It
Thrones.
has nothing to
And
do with
and
it.
I think that these guys will be sensitive enough to do a show. If it turns out to be a bad show, then I think
how
it should
many
be canned,
people
but
died
that's
in
what I'm
Game of
trying to say.
Thrones?
Please be gentle in the comments, please. Okay, we understand what Mario's doing. He's just trying to be fair and everything of that nature, but please be gentle.
Look at them.
Okay, please be gentle in the comments. Because I have no idea what you're talking about. These guys are going to be sensitive about. Don't worry, we're only going to whip them half the time.
They're not.
Okay. All I'm saying is, that, look, one of the problems I find is that you hear people are getting banned in books and in shows, like particularly in books, where people are like, oh, look, don't read this book. It's a bad book because, you know, it has particular type of storyline. But they've never read the book. And so all of a sudden you have this whole
No,
internet
you don't
campaign.
need the-
No, but then you
you
have this
open-
whole Twitter and internet campaign against
But
people.
for
And
example,
hold on,
they
let me
wanted to
finish one
ban
thing.
Huckleberry Finn.
Right, but I'm
Okay,
saying,
and I
hold
said
up.
no. They wanted to ban Huckleberry Finn because it uses the N-word profusely, and I said no. That is historically accurate for the time. You
time.
can't erase the history, and you can't shy away from it. There is a difference. Okay, there's a difference with being true to the history. If you want to tell a story like Huckleberry Finn and you want to shy away from that, hey, you know, I think that you don't want to tell a story about Huckleberry Finn. There is a difference when you say, hey, you know what? We're gonna make certain. We're gonna do Huckleberry Finn like nothing ever changed. Okay, like nothing ever changed. When you got people out here protesting now and saying, hey, look, for us, nothing has ever changed. You know, it's the same type of, we still feel the same type of subjugation. And then you have a faction, and extreme faction at that, who, this is their wet dream at the end of the day. You can't facilitate people like that.
Look, all I'm
We are
saying,
creatures
all I'm saying,
of-
Look, the problem is all I'm saying is that, you know, we, like I said before you interrupted me, is that people jump on things before they have any actual information. This is all we've heard about it.
But we
And if
have
information.
information.
No, it's not a lot of information. It's very little, actually. And I'm saying before we jump on this and say, hey, this is absolutely horrible, and this is any type of thing, we need to at least hear a little bit more.
That's
I'm willing to-
it's
I'm willing
a
to-
straw
I'm willing-
man
I'm
argument
willing-
you're making, man.
I'm willing to listen to a little bit more before I say, hey,
What
you know
more,
what?
so you tell me, what's the red line they have to cross for you then?
There could be a bunch of red lines, but I'm saying, let me
Give
hear
me an
what,
example.
I'm just saying, let me hear what else. All I'm hearing is just a proposal.
Give me an
I haven't heard
example. Give
anything
me
that
an
they actually want.
example of what tell me, what's the line they have to cross for you then? What more would you have to hear to say, no, you know, I can't, you know, I couldn't abide by this? What would they have to do?
I have no idea what they're doing. That's what I'm trying to
No,
say.
but
It's so,
That's not
so
the question
far
I'm putting.
into-
That's not the question
yeah,
I'm
but you
putting
want
to
me
you.
to put a red line on something I don't even know what.
You
they're
have
gonna
enough parameters. What would they have to show you for you to say no? I can't go with this.
do. You know, let's say they take this that they only show one particular side, like the slave owner's point of view, and you know, but I don't think they're going to do that. That's the problem. I want.
So as long as they show the slaves' point of view as well, you'd be fine with it.
as long as they show the slaves like in underground coming up and rising and taking back, then I think.
See, that's so hard, right? Because in modern day times, it would be nearly impossible for somebody to run away. With the internet,
If
with
the
cell
Confederate
phones.
won, if the Confederacy won, then
There's a whole genre of books, the Turtle Dove books, the stuff on the Rhine. There's a whole bunch of books where there's an alternative history where things. That's how we got Man in a High Tower. All I'm saying is this. You know, let's not close down until we hear more about what's ahead.
But they do
that
those
was-
things. They do those things without feeding the need of somebody who's extremist.
Yeah, but you're gonna feed the extremists no matter. It's like the
Mario.
flat earthers.
Mario,
That's not
conspiracy
the point,
theories,
Mario.
all this.
That's
I
not
would
the
go.
point.
Exact same
I would
thing.
go differently. If you hear a pitch you don't like, you say, "I don't like what they're pitching." Then you see the trailer. You don't have to see more to say, "Well, if that premise doesn't sound good, I can dislike it."
Right.
Then when they show you the trailer, And like that trailer wasn't good. So any stage of creation, you can say no.
And you're
you
right.
don't need to see any more.
But again, these guys have been watching their stuff for a while, and I said I don't think that they're going to be an insensitive bunch of dudes. Probably they will be, but let me see a little bit more. That's what I'm trying to say.
What?
Probably these guys as creators.
This is not a.
No,
This is
I'm
not.
not-
No, this is not about. I'm not talking about sensitivity or safe space or any of that nonsense. Okay, I think. Look, I think people do need to have thicker skins at the end of the day. I feel this is just irresponsible from start to finish. It's not. If you had a show and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm going to show a show about a guy who's a wife beater, and by season 5, he's not going to beat his wife anymore. Nobody would greenlight that. They would be like, no. And nobody's going to say, well, you know what? I need to see some more. Does he use an open hand or a closed fist? Nobody's going to say
One
that.
of the problems I think here is that in America, the discussion on race is just so heated.
How is this going to help?
This is not a discussion about race. It's about slavery.
Right,
There's
but
a
I'm saying-
big
but
difference.
I think that there's a group of people who don't admit to it at all. And there's a group of people who say, "Oh, that happened so long ago that all the things that
Then let them read a book.
African Americans are going through, or the effects of slavery is over with and it's done with and whatever." Well, then you have a whole.
And those people watch the show and say, oh, wow, this is fiction.
No, but I think a conversation could be had.
What
you know?
All
I'm saying is
we go to conversation.
information.
You don't
works.
need this show to have that conversation.
So listen, we're
Every
gonna have
time
to
someone
agree
makes
to
a
Nobody
mistake,
wants
they
to
want
have
a conversation.
And nobody wants to have
That's
the
all.
conversation anyway. Why? Because it's a non-starter. Nobody white wants to talk about slavery. Why? Because somebody black, the first thing they're going to say is, hey, look, you're responsible for this whole thing. So why the hell am I going to talk about it? And nobody black isn't going to use that trump card because it's a guaranteed win. That's why nobody's going to talk about it.
I
Right?
think there's
You
a
gotta
lot
let
more-
it go.
There's a lot more nuances to it than we say. I'm trying to say.
Okay, and that's all we have for today.
So once again, we agree to disagree. Okay, and that's the whole
I could
premise.
strangle you right now.
That's the premise that we've always had. All right. Look, take down the damn flag. It doesn't need to be up. Bring it
We're
down.
gonna take out-
Okay?
We're going to take down the flag, put up the show.
Take it down the flag.
Take down the flag, put the show up.
Let's see
Come
what
on,
the show
go.
is. Yeah, exactly.
There you go, Pete. Exactly.
No, wait. Hold on. There's a difference in the flag being in public spaces, and there's a difference with this show being in a private sphere. If the show comes
It's not
out,
in a private thing.
It is private because
It'll be
if
on
you-
the
if
internet.
it-
It'll be
if
more
you-
public than the
if,
flags.
No, it's done privately. It's not being representative of the government or anybody. This is representing a particular government. If you want to fly a flag in front of your house, do that. If you want to fly a flag on the government on government premises, no, that's not cool. All
You
right?
are in rare form.
Okay.
Rare
Now,
form.
If this show is if you
Well,
don't really,
wait a
let's say
second,
if
wait a
you
second.
like the show,
No.
and you don't like the show,
No,
flip
wait.
the channel. There's many shows that you see like what the
No,
hell?
That doesn't work. They've been
sorry,
saying that
sir.
argument for years, and that doesn't
It
work.
does. People don't watch the show, and it's going to
No,
die.
what
There's
do you
one
mean?
thing that we know about TV, these media companies is all about the dollars. If the money isn't in, they're not going to do it. Especially if there's a lot of controversy.
But
it's going against them.
I
making
would
it.
I would
We'll see.
only add one bit to what you're saying is that when we've seen the TV movies about the South, they sort of they almost take out as much slavery as they can. Besides Roots, they were like, I think there's one North and South.
Yeah,
Yeah,
North and
I
South.
remember.
They're like, it's like the slaves are so far on the outskirts. They're trying not to get in any trouble.
Yeah, they're just talking. They really wanted to just focus on the war.
Yeah, like
well-
they bring in John Brown, but they're like, we're not trying to deal too much. We'll show him in the background, but we're not trying to get in any trouble.
And this is what pushes this narrative here is that the Southerners have rewritten the Civil War. That's the whole Civil War narrative is now being dominated. Most of the writers who are Southerners, the historians who are pushing it, Southerners, they're renaming the battles. And I read a lot of stuff about the Civil War. And the problem here, though, is that now the point.
These
is
guys are
they're-
rewriting the
right.
Civil War.
They're pushing that. They're saying the whole thing is that it's a battle of the states. It had the slaves were just a minor part of it. But that's BS. Lincoln was elected.
But that's the same argument I already put up.
No, but I'm
you
saying-
don't want the South doesn't want to have an argument about a war that it lost and the reason why it did it. So of course they're going to try to
Right.
snip here.
But I don't think
tuck
these
here.
guys are going to do that. I think these guys are.
Oh,
coming
I
for
know.
some-
They're doing it
That's
already.
what I'm trying to
They
say.
said they won. They're doing it already. That's exactly
No,
what
but
these
that's
guys
just
want.
saying, I think this is just a look back on us. And again, I don't really want to go delve into all their ideas until I hear more exactly what they want to do.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Wait a second. All right. So what if it's not a war? What if it's like when the South come and say, "Hey, we want representation for all these slaves we have," and they're like, "Great, yeah, you got it," and they didn't do the 3/5 of
Right.
person. What if that's how they take over? And would you like that?
That would have been better.
No, it would not be better. It's a terrible idea.
Is it escaping you that Canada had slavery and they were able to do away with it with legislation. They didn't have to fight a war. England, same thing. They didn't have to fight a war. that the majority of the countries that were part of the Atlantic slave trade did not have to fight a civil war in order for it to be ended. We're unique in that thing. That's one of the reasons why we have these particular issues that we have today. You're not showing anything that's, okay, you guys over here in the South, you're going to have to own this. And then once they have owned it, everybody else, you're going to have to let it go. Yeah. They're not saying that. They're like, hey, what if these guys, this is for entertainment purposes. This is going to be titillation and so on and so forth. That's all it is. That's not helpful.
Okay, so this is where I totally disagree with you. Okay?
You disagreed on everything.
Totally.
You disagreed on everything.
Can I say what I got?
How do you totally
here I
disagree?
You know, one thing, a lot of people like to make it seem as though the American slave trade is
Look,
the only...
it's already fixed. What are we talking to him for?
I said the American
I
slave...
didn't even look at this.
Yeah.
What are we talking to him
The
for?
American
He's
slave-
prepared.
There's a check in the back pocket.
It's over. Spit it
Ameri-
back out.
the-
We
the-
did
the
it. I'm out
American-
of here.
The American slave trade
No,
was unique
we're
in the South.
done.
But
We're
you know,
done.
Yeah, we're done.
We're
we
done.
forget,
We're
we
done.
forget, we hold up. We forget
No,
the
we'll see
slave
you next
trade.
time.
Hold up, gentlemen. We
I'm
forget
outta
the slave
here.
trade in the Caribbean.
Look at the
We
shirt.
forget the slave
Look at
trade.
the
We
shirt.
forget the
I'm
slave
out.
trade in
It's
South
cool, man.
America.
It's
And
real.
Brazil was the last state to have slavery officially here in the Americas. So come on, guys. It's a safe country. You know? I can't believe you guys just walked out on me. No! You guys lost.
Look
You know?
at this. You gotta fix it. I didn't see that.